TV6, Indianapolis This Week.
And welcome to this edition of Indianapolis This Week, everyone. I'm Jason Fechner. March Madness has been in full swing right here in the Circle City. We'll check that out ahead. But a little madness all its own for Democrats and some Republicans in Washington, where we begin our conversation here today. The president Thursday officially unveiled his budget proposal featuring an expected proposed spike in funding for the Department of Defense. But more money for the DOD means less funding for other agencies, including plenty of cuts, which will trickle down to Indiana through various federal agencies and funding for state agencies. While it's just a first step, the president, who's been scheduled to visit Louisville just across the river from the Hoosier state tomorrow in support of the GOP health care plan, says this budget proposal is America First, a plan and motto he campaigned on.
We are proposing a budget that will shrink the bloated federal bureaucracy, and I mean bloated, while protecting our national security.
It fails to recognize that the health of America, the strength of America, does not just depend on our military might, which is very important and we all support, but also our strength springs from the health, the education, and the well-being of the American people.
In that proposed budget, as you saw, a 31% cut to the Environmental Protection Agency, which would, right or wrong, lead to some big changes here in Indiana and in the Circle City. Let's welcome in Jesse Kharbanda now, the Executive Director with the Hoosier Environmental Council. Jesse, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here, Jason.
Good to see you. An interesting time for environmentalists these days.
That would be an understatement, Jason. We're carefully looking at things in Washington, D.C. We're exceedingly concerned about what's going on there. You know, if we go back to the early 1970s, there used to be a great bipartisan consensus around the environment. People may forget that when the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act were passed in the early 1970s, it was passed with almost unanimous votes in both the House and the Senate. Things have changed dramatically now. And so when we look at Washington, D.C., some of the things that come to mind of great concern are obviously the appointments that have been made to head the different agencies, particularly the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which is being led by someone who has sued the EPA 14 times and who is very much against his own agency's views on the science of climate change and the views of scientists right here in Indiana. That's one area of great concern about what's happening at the federal level.
Let's talk about that. It's at the federal level, it's in the news, it's in Washington. How much of an actual impact does it have on Hoosiers and the environment here in Indiana?
Well, you know, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, which is our state EPA effectively, gets a sizable portion of its budget from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So certainly that's one very practical impact on Indiana. The broader impact is in issues like cleanup. Indiana, being a historical industrial powerhouse, is a place that also has a lot of brownfield sites.
You're focused not just on Washington, it's also right around the corner here at the State House.
Right.
Tell me about Senate Bill 309 and your opposition to it.
You know, this is perhaps the most controversial energy bill that I've encountered in the more of decade of work that I've been doing here in Indiana. And the challenge with this bill is it drastically discourages interest in solar energy. Solar jobs in the United States have been growing 12 times faster than the private sector. There's more than 200,000 jobs in the United States in solar. And here we are taking Indiana's solar policy potentially backwards, while Republican governors in Ohio and Michigan and Illinois and Iowa are all taking their solar energy policy forward. The practical consequence is that if you're a homeowner, a business owner, if you're a pastor, if you're a county commissioner or you're a mayor, you're going to be facing a potential policy climate if SB 309 were to become law that is drastically worse than the current policy climate. And that's not good for those who want to use solar to manage their energy costs, who want to use solar as an expression of their desire to be real environmental stewards in our state. I have never seen as much opposition to any energy bill in a decade as seen by the testimony that happened in the Senate chamber, in which a hearing that would normally be about 45 minutes or an hour was more than 5 hours long.
Jesse Kharbanda joining us. We appreciate your time, Jesse.
Great. Glad
Good
to
see
be
you.
with
Thanks
you.
for being here.
Thank you for having me.
The House Utilities Committee will host a hearing on SB 309 Wednesday. The much debated part of it centers on net metering, essentially a way up until now for those who've installed or install solar panels to help cover the cost. I caught up with Mark Mazel from the Indiana Energy Association to argue for the bill and against those who claim net metering is still needed.
The cost of those technologies is now dropping dramatically. There are studies that say it dropped by 20% last year. In light of that, it is probably time to create a balanced policy that says we do want more solar in the state of Indiana, but we also don't want the people without solar to continue to pay a subsidy that supports people with the solar on their homes.
Once again, that hearing is set for Wednesday. We will keep you updated on what happens. Meanwhile, the president's America First budget could have a big impact on future transit plans here in Indy as well. $75 million earmarked to get work started on the Red Line have been eliminated from the president's budget released this week. That could push the project back, forcing construction to now hold off until money from the just-approved transit tax begins to kick in November. Congressman Andre Carson says the Red Line is the backbone of our city's growing transit system that will create jobs and expand our infrastructure. Carson says he will push to try to get that funding back. Tomorrow marks former Indiana Senator Dan Coats' first full week on the job now as the new National Intelligence Director under President Trump. He was sworn in Thursday by Vice President Mike Pence. Coats will now serve as the president's principal advisor on U.S. intelligence matters. Meanwhile, the plan to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act still very much up in the air this weekend. It's not just Democrats who are against the Trump administration's proposal. Some Republican governors have been telling their party's congressional leaders the House GOP health care bill doesn't work for their states. Governors John Kasich of Ohio, Rick Snyder of Michigan, Brian Sandoval of Nevada, and Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas have sent a letter complaining the plan provides almost no new flexibility for states, fails to ensure enough projects to protect vulnerable residents, and shifts significant new cost to the states as well. In the midst of that uncertainty over the AHCA, we caught up with Indiana Congressman Luke Messer, who says he's optimistic his party's health care proposal will clear the Senate with some changes. Congressman Messer, though, called the bill a work in progress. He says members of the Republican Party are working through the details right now. We asked him what changes could be in the works.
There's been talk about what can you do to make sure that over the long haul we're able to tackle Medicaid and not just continue to drive up debts. There's a question about can we get competition across state lines so that we drop those state-by-state monopolies and create greater competition, which will create less mandates in the policies.
Our Katie Hines there asked the congressman when he plans to announce whether or not he will seek re-election of the House or put in a bid for the U.S. Senate in 2018. He said no final decision's been made. It will likely come in the next few weeks. Meanwhile, another Hoosier is now playing a key role in the Trump administration at a very critical time.
As a fellow Hoosier, I couldn't be more proud. Given your strong record of leadership, experience, and compassion, I can say with full confidence, along with the President, that we know you will rise to the challenge to help make American health care great again.
Vice President Pence swearing in the new administrator of Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Seema Verma, this week. She previously served in a number of healthcare-related roles here in Indy and is considered the architect of the Healthy Indiana Plan. Her new post, of course, comes amidst countless questions and uncertainty about the future of healthcare coverage nationwide.
Today, our healthcare stands at a crossroads, and we have no choice but to fix our healthcare system. Under President Trump's leadership and vision, we finally have an incredible opportunity to move our healthcare system into one that puts Americans in charge of their healthcare and will ensure that all Americans have access to quality healthcare that they can afford.
Verma's role stands to change significantly depending on when and if Republicans and the president are able to repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it with something else. After a quick break from health care to the president's travel ban rejected again to the race against Senator Donnelly. Our political insiders are standing by with us next on Indianapolis This. Let's welcome in our political insiders now. Kip 2 for the Democrats and our favorite conservative commentator, Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Fellas, thanks for being here. Are we any closer to a possible resolution on where this nation goes for its health care coverage in the future now than we were a week ago, or are we farther away?
I think we're farther away.
We can't even agree out of the gate. Kip, lead it off.
Well, I think we're closer because I think the ACA survives. I guess that's why I would say that. I don't think that the Republicans have the votes to pass the HCA because the conservatives want it to be more conservative, and the moderates who are in moderate districts are afraid of health care being taken away from 23 million people. And so I think at the end, it's going to be what it is now, largely.
Actually, for the same reasons. I think you have the Freedom Caucus, the more ideological conservative caucus that wants the whole Affordable Care Act repealed and gone. You've got moderate folks from moderate states like Ohio where they expanded Medicaid, they don't want to, thousands of people thrown off the rolls, and the Republicans, millions, and Republicans expect no help from Democrats and throwing away their signature legislation. So if you're Paul Ryan, I don't see how you get to it right now without a clear majority, which you don't even have in your own party, much less getting Democrats on board.
The president had referred to it as a bloodbath if this does not get done. What's the impact if the ACA survives for Republicans?
I actually think they're better off if the ACA survives than they will be if they try to repeal it. They're in a no-win situation. They're kind of like the dog who caught the car. Now they have the car. What the hell are they going to do with the car?
Abdul?
And like I said, kind of the same thing from a political perspective. Your base is now mad, ticked off. The people who wanted the Affordable Care Act gone. It's still there, and it looks like Republicans could not deliver. I think from more of a policy perspective, you're probably better off, at least for now, keeping it in place, maybe tinkering around the edges a little bit before going for a wholesale repeal and replace.
When we talk about being mad, the president certainly seemed to be mad this week when he found out that the travel ban version 2.0 was once again blocked now by a judge in Hawaii. Abdul, where does this issue go for here for the president, for the White House, for the country?
I think this eventually is going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. I really do, and that's going to be the final arbitrator of what happens here. Part of the problem is the president's previous statements, and Kip will tell you as an attorney, you can't use a legal means to reach a quote-unquote an illegal objective. So you can't say, well, this really isn't a Muslim ban, even though the majority of the place are Muslims, and that's what you're going to be going after. So it's going to be the Supreme Court that's going to decide this.
I think it's another piece of evidence that they're the gang who can't shoot straight for the various reasons he said. The president has consistently said it was a Muslim ban during the campaign, and all those statements are coming back to haunt him. And what he said the other night is going to come back to haunt him. When he said, I should have gone for the full one the first time, that's going to be used in court against him. He wants a Muslim ban. Now he's trying to, and he told people, figure out a way and get a Muslim ban without calling it a Muslim ban. That's all going to be used against him.
This is why one of the first things we tell clients as lawyers is shut up and stop talking. You're not helping yourself.
I don't think the president's going to follow your advice.
I don't think he's capable of that.
Abdul. In the midst of all of this, the uncertainty over the travel ban, the uncertainty over health care and where the AHCA goes from here, as we look ahead to 2018, even though it's a ways off, of course, what's the impact on politics here in Indiana and really across the country, Abdul?
I think the question is going to be, particularly in the Republican primary for the U.S. Senate, when you look at people like Todd Rokita, people like Luke Messer, who are considered sort of the front runners right now, as to what happens to them. Do you run towards Trump? Do you run away from Trump? I think a lot of it really will depend on what happens with Donald Trump. I think everything else will pretty much stay as is, but that'll be the marquee thing to look at.
Okay.
Well, when he talks about Todd Rokita, I just want to say for a moment, I think he's the poster child for why people don't like politics. Here's a guy who was running for Congress, got out of the congressional race to run for governor, finished third in that governor's thing, and then he came back to run for Congress, and now 2 months after he's elected a congressman again, he's talking about running for the Senate. He's exactly why people are sick of politics, and I think he's exactly the wrong messenger for the Republican Party going forward, whether he runs to or from Donald Trump. And I think
he's never lost to a Democrat too, by the way. Just want to make sure.
And I think people need to talk about Curtis Hill. I keep saying it. I think that guy's going to be a serious candidate. If he jumps in that Senate race, I says he wins.
If Curtis Hill jumps in the Senate race, he is a viable contender. I can tell you that personally, but I don't think he'll do it. I know as much as you would like to.
Well, I don't care if he does or not. I'm just saying he would be their best candidate, in my opinion.
Quickly, as we continue to watch what unfolds in Washington over the next few weeks and months, at what point do Republicans need to break from the president or break from the speaker's agenda if they are trying to protect their potential lead back in their home state or district?
I would argue you already saw it with reports that came out this week of the sort of the joint statement by the chairman and Democrat and ranking Democrat and Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee saying, hey, there's no evidence that there was any wiretapping going on at Trump Tower. So you already got these guys saying, no, Mr. President, you can tweet and say whatever you want, but we're not getting involved, as my grandmother would say, in that foolishness anymore.
Abdul Hakim Shabazz, Kip 2, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it, fellas, and you can follow us right now on Twitter at Indy This Week. And next up, the Circle City in the spotlight with March Madness underway. Its impact on Indianapolis and who's trying to steal our thunder.
That's the Honda in beautiful Avon.
And welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. I'm Jason Fechner. Indy in the spotlight this weekend. Hotels and restaurants packed, but it's not just for March Madness. The NCAA Swimming and Diving Championships continue both this week and next in the NCAA, which of course is headquartered right here. Well, they're also highlighting the sport of fencing. The NCAA Men's and Women's Fencing Championships are this week at the Coliseum. So how does Indy keep them coming back? Welcome to Indianapolis.
I mean, it's just a great experience all day, every day.
Once again,
record-setting weekend crowds is what we're anticipating and preparing for.
Visit Indy's Chris Gall says this weekend's NCAA men's basketball first and second round games are expected to pull in up to 35,000 people, many from areas already familiar with our ability to house, feed, and entertain.
Not only the drivability of these fan bases and these teams and the strong alumni support here in Indianapolis, but also because we have year-round marketing in many of these markets. Louisville, Lexington, Dayton, into Michigan and Ann Arbor. These are markets we cultivate year-round.
For Scotty's Brewhouse downtown, this is a $110,000 weekend alone, 3 months in the making.
And we plan. Oh my gosh, everything is just overflowing with the amount of product that we had to get in just to support this last several weekends. You can't imagine the number of trucks and delivery people that have just come through the doors in the last 48 hours. It's pretty staggering.
We're kind of known for being the greatest host city in the country, and we need to earn that reputation time and time again.
Ryan Vaughn, president of Indiana Sports Corp, knows weeks like this don't come easy. The city's plan to build a convention and tourism base, starting with sports, has paid off with world-class facilities and events. Gen Con, for example. And did someone say Super Bowl? But to stay ahead of the game, you have to stay on top of the game. The natatorium at IUPUI hosting the Swimming and Diving Championships, and last year's Olympic trials just finished a $20 million renovation. Vaughn admits other cities are stealing off Indy's blueprint, or at least trying to.
That's fine. We don't mind a little competition, and we feel like, again, we're still the best sports city in America. We have the greatest facilities. We have the best downtown. I would say most importantly, no one can, while they might be able to replicate our downtown or our facilities, no one can replicate our people.
And as long as people like Scotty's, Christopher Underwood are on the front lines, Indy wins.
To see it all come together, to see everybody so happy, and it's just smiles downtown, and everybody, it's a completely different attitude and atmosphere when you're downtown and you've got these large events. You can just feel the vibe and the energy throughout the city.
And from anyone in from out of town, welcome to Indianapolis. Now turning now to our weekly commentary segment, I Say, You Say, where we bring in a surprise guest to hear about whatever is on their mind. This Sunday, we're welcoming in Molly Jeffers from Midtown Indianapolis Incorporated.
You may be wondering, where exactly is Midtown? Midtown is that part of urban Indy between the White River and Fall Creek. And at Midtown Indianapolis, we advocate for all the neighborhoods in Indy's core. One of the most fun and important projects right now is Tarkington Park and the businesses surrounding it. Tarkington Park is at 39th and Illinois. You may have seen the fabulous new playground there. The surrounding area is Maple Crossing, and it's home to 5 vibrant neighborhoods. That's Crown Hill, Butler Tarkington, Meridian Kessler, Meridian Historic District, and Mapleton Fall Creek, which is where I'm from. This hub is seeing a lot of new energy and investment. It's home to locally owned businesses that have been there for nearly 100 years, a great park, the Martin Luther King Community Center, and a beautiful historic building called the Concord. The Concord has been vacant for much of the last 2 decades, and at Midtown Indy, we are working to give the Concord back to the community it deserves. We think the building should do what its name says to do, to gather and agree, to be in Concord. So if you have ideas on how to connect this gorgeous building to its neighborhood, please let me know at molly@midtownindy.org. Tarkington Park and Maple Crossing is one of Indy's oldest and most vibrant places. Let's work together to keep it that way. I'm Molly Jeffers, and that's what I say.
Thank you, Molly. We want to know what you have to say. You can reach us right there at any of those ways on your screen. Lauren Casey's ahead with the 6.
For a great 0 down payment lease.
Good morning, I'm Amanda Starantino. Investigators are trying to figure out what sparked a fire at an apartment complex on Indianapolis's west side. You can see here it severely damaged one apartment at the Wickford Commons Apartments near 10th Street and North Girls School Road. 3 other apartments were damaged and 2 people were displaced. No one was injured in this fire. Fire officials say there was no working smoke alarm in the apartment where this fire started. And police are looking closely at the death of an Indianapolis woman who was struck and killed on US 31 in Greenwood. They're trying to figure out exactly what happened there. Greenwood police say a vehicle hit 53-year-old Teresa Jean Schaefer Friday night. Witnesses say she walked directly into traffic while wearing dark clothing. The driver of the car that hit her was released at the scene. That person has not been charged. And remember, you can stay up to date on all the latest breaking news on the RTV6 app. A beautiful shot of downtown from our live Weather Now camera. It's going to be a nice day.
Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. I'm Lauren Casey. It's time for the 6. So here's the 6 things you need to know heading into the week. The debate over Greenwood's new Iceplex, well, it's heating up. Many homeowners are encouraging their neighbors to attend the next meeting about the 115,000 square foot facility that they claim will hurt their property values. If you want to learn more about the plans, you can head on over to Greenwood City Hall at 7 o'clock on Monday. Well, grab your appetite and take a trip down State Road 37. Devour B-Town kicks off this week in Bloomington. You can taste all kinds of gourmet and casual food at an affordable price. Well, Indianapolis will welcome the NCAA Division I Men's Swimming and Diving Championship to the IU Natatorium. A total of 35 male student athletes will compete in the diving championship this week. Good luck. Making America great again. This week, Trump supporters plan to rally in downtown Indy at the state capitol in support of the new president's policies. That's scheduled for 2 o'clock on Saturday. Well, get ready to rock at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. Bon Jovi is getting ready to take the stage on Wednesday night. Make sure you tune in to Good Morning Indiana on Monday morning for your chance to win some free tickets. And of course, we're all looking forward to the start of spring. Well, Connor Prairie is getting you in the spirit with a hands-on kite activity for your kids. The Tykes Fly a Kite program is Thursday and Friday from 9:30 to 11. That's what's on tap this week. Jason, back to you.
Lauren, thanks so much. Don't forget today's championship day for the Midwest and South basketball regionals. The men's swimming and diving championships are later this week, as Lauren mentioned, as are the men's and women's fencing championships, once again out at the Coliseum. I want to thank you so much for joining us here on Indianapolis This Week. For Raphael, Katie, and our entire team, have a fantastic Sunday, everybody.